What's residual bodily injury and why does Michigan make it so complicated? There's original bodily injury, which honestly is very close to the same thing, but residual means the leftover, the aftermath. If you injure somebody in an accident, we have something called personal injury protection. It's essentially medical that pretty much everybody has to carry within certain limits. I'll link a video at the end that goes over that actual options. But that residual bodily injury is in excess. So if you injure somebody in Michigan, let's say they have unlimited personal injury protection, they're covered. They have their own medical. If they even coordinated their medical, they've got those options too. So they're usually not gonna come to your insurance. Yes, your insurance will argue it back and forth on the back end. You'll never see that. That's why we're a no-fault state. In that case, if it goes over that, there's pain and suffering, there's more injuries than what their limits are. Maybe they only carry $250,000 of the personal injury protection, and it's a $500,000 claim. They're gonna lean toward the residual bodily injury as the secondary. Now the trick is you're gonna find a couple things in Michigan that are a little bit weird. If you look at a Michigan policy, you're gonna notice that they used to offer the state minimum coverage, which was $20,000 bodily injury. That's that residual. That's per person. If there was multiple people, it would be the minimum you could offer or purchase is $40,000. That's since changed to $250,000 per person and $500,000 per accident. That's what we call a default. And the default isn't the minimums. The minimums technically are still $50,000 per person, $100,000 per accident, but the state really doesn't want you to have that coverage. It's just not enough if somebody gets injured. And I'll tell you a little secret, it doesn't even make a big price difference to have the two. That's why you see most people in Michigan carry those great coverage as far as that residual bodily injury. It only costs them $5 a month, $2 a month, sometimes not even that much to have that higher limit than to have the lower limit. Why is it so cheap? Because we have the personal injury protection. We're technically no fault, and we used to have where you had to have unlimited coverage, so it didn't matter. Everyone was just covered. Now that there's options, they had to change that. And when I say default, I mean that you gotta be careful with that. If you don't wanna carry that higher limit, if that $2 in your pocket makes a difference, then you need to carry that lower coverage. You have to, every single time your policy renews, sign that you want those options. The state has made it clear that they don't want you to carry that, even though for those that can't afford it, that is the only option, then that's available. But if you don't sign the document every time it renews, you're going to automatically default back to the $250 per person and $500,000 per accident. Okay, but so what? They can't hurt me if I injure somebody because I don't have anything to take. I don't have a great job. I'm just not looking forward to this. I just need the cheapest thing possible. Just get me the lowest cost. That's where I would recommend talking to an agent to go over those. In those scenarios, be very careful because in a lot of states, actually almost every state, you're gonna notice that medical or what you own today doesn't mean that you're not liable tomorrow. What I mean by that is if you injure somebody and it takes 30 years for them to recover, they've got pain and suffering, they have to have medical treatment, they have to have special equipment to take care of their normal life, to try to make them as comfortable as possible. Guess what? You still are liable. Even if you're 18, you had that claim. When you're 35, you might still be paying for that accident. In that scenario, nobody really wants to be paying for something that far back. It's very rare that it could happen, but it's still the risk that you have to decide if it's worth taking. For those of you that pick the lower coverages, what can happen? So yeah, you can get sued and they can take a certain amount, a percentage of your income for X amount of years. You can also have a lot of your assets seized as well. You may have your license suspended, and obviously, as we mentioned, your wages would be garnished to pay back, or at least to continue paying back, any additional losses that they have. That's where having something called an umbrella policy kicks in for those that need that additional coverage, where your auto just doesn't cut it. The other part that you have to think about is, what if the person's in Michigan but not a resident of Michigan? Then your bodily injury automatically kicks in and starts paying that claim, because they don't have the personal injury protection and they may not be from a no-fault state. So now you're going to have your car insurance pay for their medical in that situation. You yourself are gonna have your personal injury protection and whatever medical you chose, so you technically are gonna be okay on your end to the limits that you've set, but now you've got to figure out how do you pay for someone else's injuries and damages. Once again, it's few and far between, but it does happen. There are a lot of people that do come to Michigan that are just visiting. I've had family members get into car accidents when they were just visitors. Actually, that was over 10 years ago, and they're still having pain from that. They're going to a lawyer and they're going after the person. In their situation, they had a lot of medical bills and they've had to pay a lot of things, and it has caused them not to have work. There's all of these occurrences that could happen from that, and guess what? The person that's responsible for the claim, if you make a mistake, we don't wish that on anybody, but if it happens, make sure that you're covered correctly. So what's the next step? If you are trying to learn the medical portion, there's really just the main piece, which is the personal injury protection. I'll put that link to the video there. If you need to learn more about that umbrella that we talked about, those additional coverages, I'll put a link in our description where you can talk to an agent and go over some of those options, but I'll also put a video here that could be helpful. I'm Mark with Valor Insurance. We'll see you soon.